I'll first talk about the Vasa as a concept. Early in my coaching career, I got a chance to be the volunteer assistant for Richard Quick at Stanford. And in 1990-91, I went to Stanford and had all these incredible swimmers to watch and learn from. Summer Sanders, Janet Evans, Michelle Griglione, just a whole lot of national champions, and Lee Lovelace at the time, eventual Olympians. And I got to watch the way Richard taught them and the way that he transmitted his thoughts about how strokes work to these athletes who are already very good. He had these things, these Vasa trainers on deck, and Rob just told me those were really the first ones. And I think he had 6 of them. And I thought it was just fantastic to have a bench. Now, I'd used those biokinetic swim benches before, and I love those. But the different thing about the Vasa is that you get a chance to actually, you put your hand in the paddle, and it stays stationary. Your hand stays stationary. You move your body over that point. Well, that's a fundamental concept that we all try to teach in every stroke, that we're actually trying to move our body in freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, and the other one, fly. Move our body past a point in the water that we're holding on to with our arm. And so just the concept of moving your body in space over a fixed point was, I think, incredibly valuable, and I think has really helped me teach people from that point on. So that was 1991. And so we bought a whole bunch of them at Brown University when I was there for 10 years, and I think Dan bought a whole bunch. Dan Flack was our club coach at the time. He bought some, we bought some. We had like 8 Vasas on the deck. We bought at Richmond one of the first ergometers, and that was a really cool product. And we pulled a whole bunch of these out of sort of a back closet in Tennessee when I got there, and they're durable. So I made this video on butterfly with Christine Magnuson, and I think we always start our season off teaching a couple fundamentals of the stroke on the Vasa trainer. And so I thought, in order to explain the way that we teach and the way that I think about fly, we're going to put Christine on the Vasa and show some things. And I got a call from Rob a couple months after the thing was published, and he said, thank you so much for putting our product in your video. That thing was made in 1995. That's a vintage antique Vasa. I'm not sure where you got it, but well, I said the thing's pretty darn durable, and the principle's the same. So I'm looking at this thing, and this is like a Cadillac. It's got stainless, everything. The rollers are beautiful, but the concept is the same. And I can tell you, if you get one of these things, you should have it for 25, 30 years. So we've been able to use this for a variety of purposes, but the fundamental purpose that I actually like to use Jeff to help me demonstrate is to teach essentially at least how I think movement works in the water. And if you guys don't know Jeff Cummings, Jeff was an All-American swimmer at Texas. How old are you? 37 years old. He's the second oldest male to be. He's currently qualified for Olympic trials next year. Second oldest male to be qualified, and second oldest person too, I believe. Is Derek qualified yet? Yeah. So third oldest. But Jeff also is the producer at Swimming World TV and works for Swimming World magazine. Awesome guy, and so I'm sure that because he's training, he's ready to get on this Vasa trainer and help me demonstrate just a couple things. So if you wouldn't mind coming up here. Let's give Jeff a round of applause because he had no idea he was doing this morning. You mind just lying down here? Okay. And Jeff has also got a bunch of the new series of videos that I put out, and in each one of those, I'll use the Vasa trainer to explain this basic set of ideas on how swimming works, and then how we use this to teach. So first of all, it's just nice to have a bench. It's nice to have somebody, a way for somebody to put their body on a platform and be able to have some mobility so that we can teach movement. In swimming, we're taught to sort of fear drag, okay? And because drag slows us down. In fact, the definition of drag is a force that resists movement through a fluid. So any object moving through a fluid has drag forces resisting that movement. And so if we're trying to move our body through a fluid, which is water, then we want to minimize drag as much as possible, mostly. So the minimization of drag comes from streamlining. And it's streamlining at every position in the stroke, trying to create the best body position, whether it's, can you show me the beginning of a breaststroke pull? Jeff is a great breaststroker. So you can see he's got tight shoulders, a long line here. Length helps reduce drag. He's trying to keep his profile that is meeting the flow of the water as small as possible. So one of the most important views in eliminating drag is just head on in the flow of the water. So if he's coming this way and the water's flowing that way, he wants to present as little surface area as possible in order to minimize drag. Okay, and that's something that we all know. It's something that we all teach. There's one place that we're trying to maximize drag as well as while we're minimizing, and that is on the body parts that are creating propulsion. Because the primary force that we're trying to create is through resistance and through drag. And that means that we're trying to maximize drag on the hand, forearm, arm, and then we're trying to maximize drag on the part of the leg that's also creating propulsion. Essentially what we're trying to do is move water back, move as much water back as we can, which moves our body forward. Okay, does that make sense? So we're trying to maximize drag on the propelling surfaces. So on the arms, I'm going to take Jeff's hand here. He can just drop this one. And so we're going to imagine what happens on the entry in a freestyle pole. So right now, Jeff has entered in freestyle, and we're not going to worry too much about rotation at this point. But this length here, this is a great position for two reasons. One is he's lengthened the vessel, okay, and the longer the vessel for a given amount of propulsion, the faster it is, the less drag there is. So length makes you faster, given the same amount of propulsive force. So he's lengthened himself. The second thing that he's done is he's entered without creating much of an additional surface area in the flow of the water. His fingertips, maybe some of his arms, but the water's probably flowing very easily over this, and he's not creating a lot of drag. This has got to transition into something that creates propulsion, and that transition has got to be efficient. It's got to be pretty quick. So we're going from one function, which is lengthening, and the other thing that he's done is he's probably carried some momentum forward, so he's actually getting pulled forward by placing his hand correctly and recovering in a forward line. This next transition is pretty critical, though, because now we're going to start to create some force. Okay, and there are two critical elements of creating drag force, and you have to remember the whole time that the water's flowing this way. Okay, if you keep that in mind, I think this makes a lot of sense. Should make a lot of sense intuitively anyway. One element of creating propulsive force is going to be speed, the actual speed that any body part is moving through the water, so velocity. Okay, and if you watched Dr. Prinz's video yesterday, he explained this really well too, that if it takes Jeff a certain amount of time to move his arm from here down to your side, okay, let's say 1 second, it takes him 1 second. If his arm were twice as long and it still took him 1 second, then his hand would be moving a whole lot faster than it is right now. So the longer the limb, if it takes him just a given amount of time to move the limb from one place to another, the longer the limb, the greater the speed at the end of the limb. And that makes sense. If I got a 30-foot stick and I move it 90 degrees, the tip is flying. If I have a 5-foot stick and I move it 90 degrees at the same speed, it's not really going that fast. So the longer the limb, the longer he can extend the limb, the greater the speed, the further he gets away from the fulcrum that he's moving on. So speed is really critical. Velocity is really critical in creating force. The other thing that is critical in creating force is surface area. And so Jeff has a fixed amount of surface area on his arm. It's not going to change. From his fingertip, we could figure this out, from his fingertip to his armpit, there's a given amount of surface area that's facing a particular direction. Okay, but surface area in creating drag has got to be in the direction of the flow of the water. So if the water is flowing this way, then the surface area that's important is the surface area that he's presenting to the flow of the water, which is he's going to be presenting it that way to try to move his body this way. Okay, so same arm with same amount of surface area. If Jeff pulls like this, just try to pull with your wrist, show what that would happen. Actually pull in real close to your body, just with your wrist. Like this. There you go, yeah. Okay, that's not a lot of functional surface area. He's just using his hand. The other thing is it's real close to his body, so there's not a lot of speed there. So he's got two things working against him that's not going to create a lot of force. If Jeff could get his hand down to here and put a lot of surface area on the water, then he's going to have the potential to create a ton of force. Okay, and it's important for coaches and swimmers to understand that the longer the limb, the greater the force, at least at the tip. Okay, and then because of the speed, and then the greater the surface area, the greater the force. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because the two things that I think are pretty critical to understanding how we get propulsion from a pole. Okay, so one more thing I think it's important to understand is that every bit of Jeff's arm that moves through the water is creating some sort of force. Every bit of it. And the third part, there's speed, there's surface area, and then there's direction. If Jeff is pressing down this way, so if he's pressing down this way, then he's creating pressure and propulsive force on his whole hand and forearm that is resulting in movement up. Okay, and that is futile because he's trying to push himself up. Gravity doesn't get tired. Gravity's going to keep him coming down. And as a coach, you probably won't see a lot of that. If somebody is spending a lot of energy pressing down in the water, you may see the athlete come up a little bit, but it's not going to last long. They will come back down after that. You're going to see it in sort of a bow wave that's not regular, and that means that they've wasted energy. Okay, so we want this surface area to be directed backwards so that the resultant forces are coming forward. Okay, so every bit of Jeff's arm is moving at a particular speed, has an amount of surface area, and the resultant forces are coming in different directions with different strength. The further he gets away from his armpit, the more force there is because the greater speed there is. And the closer he gets, the less force there is. But the more surface area there is up on this part of his arm, his forearm, and his hand. So these are big areas that are creating propulsion. This is a little bit smaller. But he's going to move in a way that's the sum of all of those forces, including gravity, including the buoyancy of the water. So the result of all those forces is going to move in a particular direction. We obviously want that to be forward, and we want it to be forward fast. So after years of trying different exercises to try to sort of pinpoint the way that I think this works, we finally got these we finally got these cuffs made. Rob from Vasa made these for us that go in a really critical place. And I think that the result of all these forces ends up essentially being balanced through the midpoint, maybe upper third of the forearm. Okay, and I think another way to think about that is if you have a fairly large and irregular object and you're trying to throw it, you're going to need to, and that's what we're doing. We have a large irregular object and we're trying to throw it down the pool in a very specific direction. If you're trying to create some force on it, it's got to come up through one point. That's the center of balance. And so if I've got a moon rock that's big over here and long over here, now I'm going to find something in the middle that may not look like the middle, but it's the middle of all the forces that are pushing against me. And if I throw it in a straight, if I get it right, I can throw it in a straight line. But I think a lot of those forces come up through the forearm. And so when we put this around Jeff's forearm, you slide up a little bit. This is kind of cool because we have this line that is essentially describing the direction that we want to go in. This strap is anchored to this point, and we want Jeff to essentially move in that direction. So it's real easy when you use these straps to get the swimmer to feel, okay, that we want to get in this position as early as possible in the stroke. Okay, and if Jeff doesn't get his elbow forward and his fingertips down, then this cuff is going to slide down to his wrist. Okay, so this is just a great tool for helping learn position in the front part of the stroke. And this is no different in my mind for breaststroke. It's no different for butterfly. So this movement, this essential movement, which involves shrugging the shoulder up, elevating the scaps, getting the elbow forward, and getting the hand deep. You notice we're not up near the surface. We're down to try to get his hand away from this fulcrum, to get some speed and get some surface area. That's the whole point of this, is to get set up for speed and surface area, so maximum force on the water. Then we're in position to start the pull. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm awesome.
Good. Falling asleep down there? So, so Jeff is in the position that we want. The elbows underneath the shoulder somewhat. Now, the fingertips are down, so we have this great angle on the water. Okay? And now his lats are really stretched. And if you hold a swimmer in this position, if you just let them stretch in that position for a while, I really believe they're going to learn something. I think they're going to learn how to relax. There is the Vasa through gravity is creating some pressure on the forearm, and that's what's stretching them forward. And I think the best swimmers, when we watch them, they let the water, when they enter, they let the water stretch them forward. They find a way to let the pressure of the water, through that whole balancing of forces, stretch them forward and really load up the lats, load up the abs connected to the hip, and get ready for an explosive pull.